So the studies for year one, this might be difficult to see from a very small screen, but I'll just go over some of the classes. So this picture is an example of the technique classroom. So there's many different chiropractic beds, and then in the middle, there's an elevated platform where the instructor goes over what kind of technique you're learning that day, whether that's the shoulder, the knee, the hip, etc. The picture on the left, I know it's really small to read, but basically there's 3 different classes that you learn in the first year of that graduate program. And it's radiographic sciences, medical sciences, and chiropractic technique. And so through this year, you're doing a lot of, neuroanatomy labs in some of those health or medical sciences courses. You're learning about how x-rays are generated, and also what the exposure is like for different types of imaging. And then the chiropractic technique, in the first year, we keep it very simple. We're not doing many big cervical adjustments or anything, because that takes a bit of time to accrue that skill. So we're learning all about joint mobilizations, what kind of end ranges the shoulder can get into, these types of things. We're learning how to be very safe in the first year. So in the second year, this is the most intense year, I would say. So when actually, I'll go into that in a second. I was going to talk about timing, because people go to Australia and they're like, oh, I want to travel, I want to do this and that. But the second year, if you're a post-grad student, is the most intense by far. You don't have much time. You're probably at university, you're at the uni for probably 40 plus hours a week, if not more. And so it's quite an ordeal, but it's really good to have a good support group while you are studying there. Just to go quickly into the description of what those classes look like. So neuromusculoskeletal diagnosis. So you've got a rehab side and an orthopedic side. So you're learning, if a person is recovering from an ACL tear, what kind of exercises would you give that person to help strengthen that area? And then the diagnosis side is the orthopedic. So you're learning, what test, if you do this test, what does that mean the condition will be? So gives you an idea of how to be a better clinician. So the first year, learning how to be really safe. Second year, learning to be like a really good clinician and have an eye for detail. And then one of the other classes here is the clinical management and radiographic diagnosis. So we're learning to look at X-ray images and be like, okay, I can differentiate this osteoarthritis from a serious bone cancer, for example. And you're learning to see different conditions that affect different demographics, things like osteoporosis on an elderly female versus a hairline fracture of a tibia of a young athlete. So being able to differentiate from different conditions like that. And at the end of the second year, you slowly are getting geared to move into that final year, which is where you're doing all the clinical work. So by the end of the second year, you're expected to be kind of on your game a little bit, and the skills that you've developed already, you're starting to learn how to actually apply some force into the spine and achieve some outcomes with the spinal manipulation. So then the third year, it's primary, and I would say, in my experience, this was my most favorite year, because it wasn't so information dense. You're learning to work with people, and I guess if you're a people person, this would be the most fun year, because you're learning to work with people, and you're learning from experience. And we have different different outreach events. So for in this picture here on the left, where we have a good connection with some of the rugby clubs in the Sydney area. We also worked with a few surfing teams as well. So just some sports, to name a few, but also some like geriatric placements as well. Work at an old folks home, just getting them to basically do light range of motion exercises to rehab any kind of injuries that they've had. So they have a lot of good connections in and around the Sydney area for that too. One interesting class that is a little bit different in the final year as well is you learn about research methods. So there's some students that find research particularly interesting. And for example, like, so each student has to do a research project at the end of the year. And depending on how advanced your group is, you can get some interest in getting publishing done if your supervisor thinks that you're up to speed with that. Sorry, I've got a air compressor above my room, so that's a bit of a funny sound there. Research methods very good as well, just for analyzing information. You know, as a clinician, you have to be able to filter and sift through some of the research that, you know, maybe the evidence isn't fantastic there or isn't clinically relevant, and you need to be able to differentiate between, you know, a solid systematic review that has had a long trial versus, you know, simple case studies or just anecdotal experience. So that is one class that was quite valuable for me as well.